Chapter 1159, and this is it. There's no way that we're going to cut away to see something else because there's no better place to see the God Valley incident than right now in this flashback. Although it wouldn't be the end of the world, for me at least, if the incident was held from us a bit longer, because the build up to the incident and the context surrounding it is just as important as the incident itself. Build up like we see in this chapter alone, which recontextualizes the event 10 different times. But I'm sure this chapter is the final one before we see it in its entirety, surely. Or from another point of view, depending on which specific event marked the start of the incident, like the beginning of the native hunting competition or the arrival of rocks, in this chapter the God Valley incident may have already begun. Starting with the cover story following the bombshell that was the Kozuki Moria reveal, this time Yamato is done with the final region of Wano and is returning to the flower capital. But back to the Moria stuff first, because there's still a lot of unpacking to do there. Going along with his name Gecko being written the same as Kozuki, just with the characters reversed, when he fought Kaido, the narrator called him and his crew the Gecko Pirates, so it looks like by that point in time he had already taken up the name Gecko Moria. But if the people of Wano still knew him as Kozuki Moria, then him changing his name may have been very recent at that point in time. But another thing, the Gecko Pirates, before he fought Kaido, he had already gone out to sea as a pirate, and we know that to be true because he was at Roger's execution a couple years before. So the idea would be that once he heard about Kaido's takeover of Wano, that's when he returned to fight, try and win it back maybe. Although that makes his defeat even more crushing if he went from the kind of guy who would fight for his home like this to the lazy broken mess we see in the present, and this switch up in his personality seems to have happened right after the fight, since we know he stole Shusui and fled. What are the odds that now that he is free, he doesn't go and join Cross Guild, but instead he goes to Wano, because while he was in prison, Kaido was defeated by Luffy, so he could go back. I know Momo hasn't opened up the country, but he made it back to fight Kaido, so I think he'd still be able to make it back there now. And as for now, Yamato returning to the capital, I'm sticking to my guns that there's something else still to come in this cover story, which I think is that with the information Caribou gave them, the Blackbeard pirates will show up to retrieve the ancient weapon Pluton, and that will mark the end of the cover story. So the main chapter begins with, just as expected, Shaki being kidnapped from Hachinosu, confirming and leaving no room for doubt that she was indeed the treasure of Pirate Island that Garp was talking about. And by the way, this also means that the tales of Shaki's beauty extended even outside of the pirate world, to the point where Garp, not yet the hero of the Marines but still Garp, knew how unbelievably stupid it was of them to take her. But at the same time, if the whole world knew about her, then that would include the Celestial Dragons, and at that point it would be out of character for them if they didn't try to kidnap her the same they did with Ginny. So maybe the government did know that it would be a bad idea, but if a Celestial Dragon wanted her, they couldn't disobey. Although it wasn't actually a government agent who carried this out. Remember the mention of a traitor a couple chapters ago? That traitor is Wang Ji, Ochoku, Caribou's father, who kidnapped Shaki for the world government in exchange for a big payday, I guess. He also killed Don Marlin, which is why neither of them can be seen on the spread of the Rocks Pirates in chapter 1096. He isn't stated to be the traitor, but based on his facial expressions throughout the chapter, it's easy enough to put the pieces together, like here for example, where everyone is panicking while he's busy counting a stack of cash as if he just got paid for completing a job for someone. And that's why the Navy didn't take over Hachinosu when Rocks died and Wang Ji became the boss afterwards. They maybe let Wang Ji take over because of his help earlier with Shaki. And this adds a whole new layer to Blackbeard overthrowing him at the Rocky Port incident. He got back at the man who betrayed his father, and the news of the kidnapping spreads like wildfire as well. It was so massive that it even impacted the global economy. Gloriosa's breaking down. Roger is completely pissed that Rocks would let something happen under his watch, while Rayleigh looks very worried. So Shaki does seem to be the reason why the Roger pirates went to God Valley, her kidnapping, and I said I didn't mind her being the reason for the incident because I thought it was funny, but I said this when everyone thought the God Valley incident occurred because of their lust for her. But now there's a bit more to it, because last chapter we see Rayleigh Rayleigh stayed on the ship when the crew visited her bar, as if he was trying to help his captain out with Sharky, while on the other side, Roger was disappointed that Rayleigh didn't come with them because Roger wanted to help him with Sharky. So it kind of shows how close those two were. They were willing to put aside their own feelings for the sake of the other. They wanted to help each other out, and I'm sure that sentiment extends here as well. With her kidnapping, Roger saw firsthand how much Sharky loved Rayleigh, and we see Rayleigh's worry here. They aren't doing this out of lust. Whether it's Roger wanting to help Sharky, whether it's Rayleigh wanting to help Sharky, whether it's Roger wanting to help Rayleigh, from my point of view, they're doing this for the sake of someone they care about. But this is also on track with another idea that while Rayleigh has been avoiding Sharky, he will be the one who saves her on God Valley, which will mark the beginning of their lifelong relationship. So could this mean that we see Garling versus Rayleigh? Because Garling would have definitely amassed the most points in the hunt, so he would have won Sharky, seeing as she was the top prize. Maybe it was his idea in the first place to have her kidnapped and placed as a prize. It also makes sense that it would take a member of the Rocks Pirates to pull it off, because I don't think any government agent not in CP0 would be strong enough to do it, since she was a former Empress of Amazon Lily, let alone the fact that she was on Hachinosu. So what if Rayleigh saved Sharky and Garling saw that as Rayleigh stepping in between him and his prize? That sounds like a fight. Then to 38 years ago, it's now the year of the incident. Garling is on God Valley, and I was thinking from last chapter that maybe since he was more intelligent than the average celestial dragon, he wouldn't be the kind of man who would abuse his wife. Maybe he wouldn't see her as just an object. Forget that, because he might be a smart celestial dragon, but he's still a celestial dragon. He's a piece of crap, he's scum, horrible person, a horrible father, since the townsfolk were only helping out because he wasn't there. She introduces him to the kids, so he had no idea that they even existed until just now, and while his reaction to seeing them is actually kind of wholesome, that's where the niceties end. He stabs her after refusing her offer to live with them on God Valley because he knows what's about to go down. He says it won't be around for much longer, but we don't know how, because at this point Vegapunk is not working for the government and the Mother Flame isn't an option yet. And as Navy ships arrive, the twins' mother, we never learn her name, she hits the ground, and Garling states a wife worthy of him has already been chosen. He's the one who ordered Sharky's kidnapping, and she is to be his wife if he wins the native hunt. And next we learn that one Monkey D. Dragon was also there on the island. Everyone was apparently on the island, it seems. He's here while the Marines stop the people of the island from leaving, and now you can see the Monkey D family resemblance coming through. You can see that this is the son of Garp and father of Luffy. He's just a regular Navy soldier here, no justice coat. He's just a Marine. We're not even given a rank for him, a greenhorn, so in other words, fodder. We learned in the Kuma backstory that he was in the Marines, and in his own words he said that there was no justice to be found there. So if there was any one specific event, one incident out of all of the Navy and world government atrocities that would lead him to such a conclusion, it's understandable that God Valley is the one. Asking his superior about the mission but being shut down instantly makes it clear that he is standing on the wrong side. Even his other commanding officer is telling him, don't think too deeply about this, just get the job done. It's like Kizaru, just cogs in the machine. Cogs don't question their orders. And speaking of Kuma, we see him as well as Ginny and Ivankov on their way to the island traveling in slave ships. We know that they have their own B-plot to look forward to on the island. Ginny is already hard at work with the leaks. She says now it's up to the informant to do their job, so keep that in mind. Ivankov is trying to lift the spirits of the other broken slaves, and it's working for at least one of them, because in another section of the same ship, Kuma has a smile on his face as he can hear how energetic the other slaves are, of course not knowing who Ivankov is yet. And we cut to a Cypherpole Intelligence Bureau where we see a young Morgans who 38 years ago would be only 15 years old is already trying to manipulate global events. He's trying to bribe the agents there by offering some valuable information, and he stood his ground when they threatened him. It's funny how Morgans is bold enough and strong strong enough in the present to handle Cypherpole agents with ease. He has strength, and even though it's only an albatross fruit, it's still a zone, so I guess it still would give him enhanced durability, but instead of fighting for a living, he's chosen a life that gives him even more power, the life of a corrupt reporter, and we know that he does so well that he is able to monopolize the entire industry. So it wasn't only Ginny who was trying to attract outsiders to cause chaos. While she was doing it for survival, Morgan's here and now in the present basically does it for the love of the game. So it looks as though Morgan's is Ginny's informant. She leaked the information to him, he leaked it to Hachinosu, and the pirates of Hachinosu, the Rocks pirates included, set sail. Back on Hachinosu, the news of Shaki being alive and where she is has lit the island up again. Wang Ji, the only one not feeling the vibes for obvious reasons. We see Whitebeard learning that the native hunt is an actual thing. He's got the strongest moral code out of any of the Rocks pirates crew members, so it's fitting we see his reaction. Big Mom is after some devil fruits for her kids and talks to Kaido about getting a fruit himself, which he has longed for. Again, it's the siblings dynamic, Whitebeard giving him advice and now Big Mom getting his hopes up, like maybe you will get the devil fruit that you've been wanting for Christmas. And Rocks, with this information, decides to go to God Valley. Same with the Roger pirates, really now all fired up. And Garp, we see the end of his talk with Kong again, lining things up with chapter 1096. We heard about the Rocks pirates setting sail with other crews behind them, but the Rocks pirates run into Harald, so this is what the narrator was talking about the next time they would meet. So it was talking about the God Valley incident, although this is just before then, so it seems Harald did not play a role in it after all. There's also a government ship nearby, maybe tailing Harald, watching his every move. They can't have someone of his status and strength pulling anything funny now, although all they can do is watch from a distance. They begin with a back and forth. Of course, their last interaction didn't end on the best of terms, but then he asks if the two of them can talk alone. First of all, him with his three crewmates that would become the future emperors of the sea. That's cool. Secondly, I love this detail in the art where you can visibly see Rox's face soften up between the panels even before we see them sit down together. It's enough to imply there's something more important that needs to be discussed here, and Rox tells him the reason he wants to go there, and it isn't because of Shaki, as last chapter made clear. The reason he wants to go is because his name is not Rox. His real name is Davy D. Xebec, belonging to the Davy clan, which lived in hiding in secrecy, which is why he took on the name Rox publicly, and he is a descendant of a man called Davy D. Jones. That's a lot. Well, technically it's a little, it's 2 sentences, but it's a lot. Before diving into it, I want to mention, and I don't know if this is intentional, but everyone calls him Rox. Us as fans, I feel, more so call him Rox than Xebec, but more importantly, the characters in the story called him Rox, even though that's his fake but still family name. Like Gold D. Roger, they call him Roger. Monkey D. Luffy is Luffy. Rox D. Xebec, they called him Rox, not Xebec. I wonder if that was to draw attention to that name Rox, that there was more behind it than we knew, which there was, the secret name, the secret family, Davy. So as for Davy D. Jones, I went over this back when Xebec, I'll call him Xebec from now on, told Emu that he was an admirer of Davy Jones. He was first revealed to us in an SBS with a character design given, of course based on the legend of Davy Jones' locker, not the legend of Davy Jones, because even though Davy Jones' locker is a thing, I'm 99% sure that there's nothing about anyone called Davy Jones aside from that locker, which is a metaphor for the oceanic abyss that would swallow sailors. It seems like it was the inspiration for the drawback of devil fruits as well, where the users sink to the bottom of the ocean. And now it has been revealed that Davy Jones, Davy D. Jones, is an actual character who really existed, Blackbeard and Xebec's ancient ancestor. Interesting that it's Davy D. Jones, because after Xebec mentioned him previously, I thought maybe the true meaning of the D was Davy, so it would be Monkey Davy Luffy, but it doesn't seem so anymore. So the Davy clan up there with the Monkey family as one of the most powerful families in the history of this world. And since Xebec saw fit to say the name in front of Emu, the guy must have been someone who might have once opposed Emu. My first idea was that Davy D. Jones is the true name of the original Joyboy from the Void Century, but that would mean Xebec and Blackbeard are Joyboy's direct descendants, which I was unsure about because there's so many more characters letters that carry the D, it seems a bit premature to say that at this point. Davy D. Jones is not Joyboy, but he has the will of D, and he seems to have opposed Emu and is from ancient times, so you would assume Void Century, especially since his family, his descendants, had to go into hiding. There's an existing theory that states Joyboy gave the will of D to each of his crewmates, which is why so many people from different families have it. What if Davy D. Jones was one of his crewmates, maybe even his first mate? He called him a legendary pirate as well, so I think being the first mate of Joyboy is almost as legendary as one can be, or maybe he was another pirate captain who set out to sea after seeing Joyboy do it. An ally maybe against the 20 kingdoms. Anyway, as a part of the Davy clan, he's going to the island under the pretense of saving Sharky, when in reality he is going to save his family. He feared for the safety of his wife and kid Little Teach, so he sent them back to his homeland, which is God Valley. So that island is important for like 5 different reasons at this point. But firstly, it turns out that this man, with all the crimes he's been a part of, all the heinous acts he's committed, is actually a good father. He distanced himself from his family not for his own self-interest, but for the sake of their own safety. Pretty much the same thing Dragon did with Luffy. I love this kind of character archetype, this character trait where they are an absolutely awful person, but they have one thing about them which is a massive positive, and most of the time it is that they are a family person. Like how Rox here is a family man. He doesn't think that this is the government luring him in because of the number of celestial dragons also there, so it wouldn't make sense, but it's clear that the information about Sharky being leaked was a big mistake on their part, which is a fact. Ginny and Morgan's the real MVPs of the God Valley incident, because without them it never would have happened. Moving on though, Harald refused the offer to join one last time for old time's sake. They do fight, but Harald purposefully throws it and lets Rox pass. You can tell by his face he didn't want to do this, but with the government ship lurking, he had to make it look convincing. So their friendship wasn't over just yet. Although if xebec does indeed die in the incident, it will be forcibly cut short very soon. And on the island, the opening ceremony of this native hunt is now underway, and Sharky is the biggest prize of the tournament. Remember how Charlos wanted to use and parade Shirahoshi around the town? A similar fate would have been in store for Sharky as well, I would assume. Luckily for her though, her Knight Doc King in shining armor will be there undoubtedly to save her. She's been dressed up in Kuja attire, or a Kuja themed dress. I wouldn't call it Kuja attire per se, because I don't think they wear full body dresses. She has also been cleaned, but we know they aren't treating her right. They're only doing this so she can look good for her potential future owners. They say the winner can decide if she is to be their wife or slave, but it's the same shit. Either way, she's going to be a slave to them. It does get the crowd going though. The 2 brain cells all celestial dragons share are banging together right now. We see along with Garling are Summers and Gunko, the other member of the Manmire family as well. They're all backing themselves to win. It's like this conversation from chapter 1096, only with the inclusion of Sharky's fate, it's somehow even more messed up. Killingham's the only member we don't see here, so you wonder where he is or if he's not joined at this point in time. And interestingly enough, the Manmire family member says that with Gunko here, they might be able to get a trophy. So with Gunko here, we know from her title card, her revised title card, in the present that she is a Manmire herself, but there was also the flashes of her past with Brooke. So if they are saying they have her now, then it doesn't sound like she was a member of the family at the previous native hunt, although we saw her as Emu's servant when xebec infiltrated, which was a whole 18 years before this, since that reverie was 56 years ago. I had the idea before, but with the wording of that line from the Manmire member, it could still be the case that Gunko is Emu's personal experiment brought up from the lower world, which is how she knows Brooke. And perhaps Yoki could still be her father here, or any other member of the Rumbar pirates, or maybe she was royalty in the kingdom Brooke used to serve. She was brought up, then used for experiments before Emu assigned her to one of the 19 families who really can't question it as it's Emu's will. And assuming this Manmire member is also a holy knight, maybe they're the head of the family and they're the only one who knows Gunko's true nature. And back to Dragon, who finds the mother of Shamrock and Shanks on the verge of death, so she almost certainly dies on this island on this day. She begs Dragon, who at this point is no one special, another random marine, she begs him to save her kids. So does this mean that Monkey D. Dragon is responsible for saving Shanks' life? Garling has the kids, so Dragon, a rookie, somehow needs to manage to take them from one of the holy knights. And with Shanks, he appears to succeed, putting him in a chest before the Roger pirates unknowingly took him. Does Shanks owe his existence to Dragon? Maybe he tried the same thing with Shamrock as well, but Garling intervened, saved Shamrock, but Dragon was able to keep a hold of Shanks. There's so many potential interactions with Garling on this island. It's ridiculous how a character introduced 1080 plus chapters deep into the story could have this much importance, and yet everything still makes sense. His existence doesn't contradict anything, and it's such a huge domino effect. Dragon saved Shanks, who would one day save his son. That is some good karma. I've been a Dragon supporter since day one. Everything that's happened concerning him, the people around him, I think can be rationally explained given the magnitude of what he's trying to achieve, and plus he's a genuinely good person, as this incident is going to make clear. And since we know Miss Marshall D. Mother and Little Marshall D. Teach are on the island, they have been chained up, enslaved. The two of them are caged here. We don't see her face, but Teach is 2 years old. He must survive no matter what she says. You could argue she's talking about his Davy D blood, but it's maybe even more powerful if she's purely saying it as a mother who wants her son to live. Look at him here. He's an innocent child. He knows nothing of the world, but the world already wants him dead. He might not remember, but I'm sure his mother might have told him about how his father died, and the theory did used to get thrown around that his own crew, specifically Whitebeard, betrayed him. I'm not so sure now given what we've now learned about xebec, but it's still an option. On top of being xebec's kid, it's already coming together why he is the way he is, and there's going to be so much more when we see his own backstory in the future. And the final big announcement, the biggest, highest scoring targets for this hunt, a buccaneer boy, and after 800 years, the rediscovery of the Davy clan. Little baby Teach, confirming that Davy D. Jones is in fact from the Void Century. The thing is, xebec said he should rely on the Davy clan or family, with Harold putting together that his kin are on the island. That very much sounds like there are other members of this family on God Valley still maintaining their secrecy, I guess. Could this kid be a young Moria on God Valley, and could he be a member of this Davy clan? Plus that would explain how he got the corpses of the Rocks pirates. He was on the island this day, so he would know where to find them later. And if this is him, I guess after this he would make his way to Wano. Maybe someone took him there. Although, I don't know, xebec doesn't think this is a trap, but there's still a lot that says it is. I think it's still possible that what is going on here is that Teach and his mother, members of the Davy clan, were the huge discovery Garling was talking about, and this whole event was a setup to lure xebec in and end him, presumably. And even before all the leaks, by kidnapping Shaki, Garling unintentionally opened Pandora's box and everything went south, with Roger and Garp getting involved, which I highly doubt they were expecting. Well, we know they weren't because Kong had to call in Garp as some emergency backup, but even without Roger or Garp, to say that this was an effort to trap xebec is very bold given that they would have known who his crew was and who he would be traveling with. But as long as xebec was captured or killed, I guess everything else would just be collateral. And on top of that, before any of this, before the incident, before the hunt, Garling already stated that the island wouldn't be around for much longer. So is there even more about God Valley that still hasn't been revealed? One question though, the world government knew about Blackbeard from the time he was a baby. They knew whose blood he carried, but in the future they let him join the 7 warlords. Why and why not deal with him then? I guess that's another thing that's going to be answered in his own flashback later down the line. So all xebec wanted to do was save him and his wife. Roger fought him for letting Shaki get kidnapped, which I guess only happened because all xebec was thinking about, and rightfully so, was his own family, which I'm pretty sure Roger would not know about, otherwise why would he have gone after him? Then Garp going after Roger. Sengoku said those two teamed up against the Rocks pirates. I can only assume that for the rest of the crew they would have been doing their own thing. Each member of the Rocks pirates would have had their own individual goals on the island, so they would need to be dealt with. And as for xebec personally, I can only assume that in his rush and anger trying to save his family, a ton of civilians would have found themselves in his path, so Garp would have to step in to protect them for forcing him to fight xebec as well. You know, the one fear I have with this story, it's kind of irrational but rational at the same time. We see this story keep expanding, getting bigger, more epic, while somehow keeping every part in line. There's so much to it, every detail matters, so I, and I'm sure many others, wonder how on earth is it all going to be tidily wrapped up at the end, especially since I'm sure Oda has stated he's had the ending in mind from the start. But with the way we've seen the Oden backstory, the Kuma backstory, and now this backstory all play out, seeing all of these massive pieces come together, live up to expectations and then some, I'm certain that this is going to go absolutely crazy, and that gives me hope that the final war, which will be God Valley on steroids essentially, is going to be even more so. So next chapter we're going to see it all, not all because I assume it's going to last for more than one chapter because there's going to be a lot to cover, but finally we are going to see the God Valley incident.